Welcome back to another edition of Components Breakdown. Today we're going to look at a lighter Euro game called Stone Age. Stone Age is a 2 to 4 player game. It takes about 60 to 75 minutes to complete. It's got some set collections, some dice rolling, but at heart it's just a simple worker placement game. Now, we really enjoy playing Stone Age for the fact that it is a gateway game and it's extremely easy to teach newcomers, and it's easy to learn as well, which makes it one of those rare gateway games that's still in our collection to date. Now, in Stone Age, each of the players is going to take on a tribe in which they're trying to gather resources, hunt for food, farm the land, and create stone tools in order to progress their civilizations. With that, let's go ahead and open up the box, see what comes inside the game, and then I'll explain the gameplay mechanics to you. So let's move forward. Stone Age ships with a extremely well-written and easy-to-understand rulebook. It is 8 pages, no problems learning the rules. The rule sets are well explained through numerous examples inside of here. Now, it also comes with a one sheet that is double-sided that has examples of all of the civilization cards within the game. Also inside of the box, you get 4 of these player boards, which each player will place in front of them. There is a large game board, and we'll go through all these as well. There are food tokens with different denominations. They go 1, 2, 5s, and 10s. Comes with a leather cup in which you can use to roll your dice with. Now, it does not come with the Plano boxes you see in here, and there's actually a divider which I have put off to the side, as with most of my games. But inside of this, you have your civilization cards, you have your first player marker, you have all of your buildings, and then you have your resources, your stone tools, which are over to the side, and all of your tribe members, and there are 10 of these tribe members per player, and several dice. So let's set up a 2-player game and show you how the gameplay works. Now, I've set up a 2-player game, and I wanted to make note of a couple different things prior to going into the components one more time. And that is that the game has a couple different rule sets depending upon the number of players playing. There's a 2, 3, and 4-player rule set depending on how many players are participating in the game. Please note that I'm just doing a 2-player game, so if you play with more, the rule set will change. Also wanted to note that the game scales extremely well depending upon the numbers that you play with. I've played it with 2 to 4, and I actually enjoy it with all of them. I mean, I've never had any issues with any of the number of players, and that's very unusual for a worker placement style game. Now, let's go into the components one more time so that when we do that, you'll have a basic understanding of the gameplay when I start explaining that. So the typical setup on a game start is that each player starts off with 12 food in front of them. They start off with their player board in front of them as well, and in that player board is broken into several different sections. We're going to go through them individually. The first area is the campsite, and in the campsite, each of the players is going to place 5 of their tribe members. There also is a space over here for stone markers, or for stone tools I should say, and they simply fit into there. There is a place for buildings, and they will fit into these locations. And then there is a place for a scoring track or a reminder of a scoring track. You will collect civilization cards as the game goes on, and depending upon the variety of them and the number that you have, corresponds to the number of points that you'll be getting, and that's what the wagon wheel on here means. So if you collect one card, one unique card, you're getting 1 point. If you collect all 8, you get 64 points. There's also a place on here that shows you the values of each of the resources in the game, or the number of points or dice you have to use in order to acquire them. So wood is 3 and gold is 6, and we'll get into that explanation a little bit later. The civilization cards are placed and shuffled at the top of the game board, and 4 of them will be placed on the board face up in these 4 locations. Also, each player is going to place the other 5 of their total 10 tribe members into a central bank. Now, each player is only starting with 5 of their 10 possible tribe members. All the food will also be placed in the central bank along with the first player marker, the dice cup, and all of the dice. So now let's look at the board. And the first thing I'm going to mention on the board is that it has a scoring track that goes around it. And it goes from 0 to 99. And you'll be placing these large tokens, square tokens on there. Now it's very typical for a game of Stone Age to loop the board 2, maybe even 3 times, because we've got up to 300 and some points before in our games, and as I said, that is very typical. There's a place for resources in the game, and there's 5 basic resources in the game: food, wood, clay or brick, stone, and gold. Now, when you place your tribe members onto the board, and you'll be doing that from turn to turn, there are small circles and large circles throughout the game board, and that denotes how many total tribe members people can place in those areas. For all of the 4 wooden resources, when I say wooden, I mean wooden tokens, there is a total of 7 players that can fit in each of these areas, no more than 7. But on the food production, where you hunt and gather your food, any number of them can be placed because there's a large circle. There's also 3 special areas on the game board, and they're all down here, and they consist of one area where you can produce food, 2 spots where you have to place 2 of your markers at the same time to produce a new tribe member, so basically you're having a baby, and the 3rd area is to produce these stone markers. As you know, only one person can be in each of these places per game turn. There are the civilization cards, which also have small circles on each of the areas of which you can place your tribe members to gather those particular cards. And the last place on the board is the building production. Now, with a 2-player game, you only start with 2 stacks. In a 4-player game, you're going to start with 4 stacks. And again, you can place one of your tribe members on these circles to designate that you're doing that action for the turn. So with that, let's actually start explaining the gameplay and see if it may be something you're interested in. So in a typical round of Stone Age, there are 3 phases that take place in which everybody does those phases at the same time. The first phase is simply placing the number of tribe members you have onto the board. The second phase is doing the actions of the areas in any order that you wish for those people that you have on the board, and the third is feeding your people. So let's go through the first turn. The first turn, you simply take any number of your people, 1 through 5, and place them to a location on the board. When you place people on a location of the board, you simply take a tribe member and place them over one of those circles. So for instance, you put them in the food area, meaning that that food area, since there's only one circle, can only be occupied you for the rest of the round. And that goes back and forth between each of the players until they exhaust all the tribe members that they have. Now, in a 2-player game, which I'm explaining to you now, you can only have one tribe member or one set of colors in a particular one of the resources. So if yellow goes to wood, blue can never place any of his people in the wood. Same with all the other type of resources. Now that only happens on the wood component ones, not on the food. So food can be by anybody. So as I mentioned, you go back and forth and do all of the distribution of your tribe members onto the board. And then you take the actions. So what are the actions? Because that's very important. This game does have some light dice rolling in it, so that dice rolling corresponds to your player board. And let's try to explain that in a little more detail. If the yellow player had placed 4 of his people on there, he would get to roll 4 dice during his action phase. And the reason for that is you're going to be rolling 1 die for each resource, or for each tribe member you have in a particular resource. So if you were to roll 4 dice, and say he were to get, where here we have 7, you divide that by the resource itself, which is wood, which is 3, I'm sorry. So 7 divided by 3, he would take 2 total wood. And you're going to do that for each of the areas that you have people in. And you can do this in any order you so wish to do. So if he had 4 people here, and he still rolled a 7, as you see there, that is actually divided by 4 because it's a higher resource to gather. So he would only actually gather 1. Now, how do the tools work? When you gather tools, you simply place them on your player board as such. And you can tap your tools to add one to a die roll. So the more tools you have, the higher you can modify your die roll. You can only do that once per turn per tool, but the tools will actually flip over to 2 when you gather more. So once you gather 3 ones, the next one you gather goes to 2, and they go all the way up to 4 with the other tools on here. So you can really have a chance to modify your die rolls if you're not getting what you need in particular spots. Going through the game again, there are production areas for food. Your food track is over here on the left-hand side. And at the end of the turn, depending on how far you are up on this food track, you're going to get that many food by the end of the turn. And we'll get into why you need to have food in just a moment when we get to the game end turning thing with the food production. You can also place 2 of your people here to gather another one of your people, which will stay with you for the rest of the game. But remember, you're going to have to feed that person at the end of every round. You can also place your people on these building tiles, which allow you to get victory points immediately. So for this one, you'd have to turn in 2 wood and 1 stone to get 11 total victory points. If you were to do this, you place it on your side and it stays there for the rest of the game. And the last things are the civilization cards, and we'll try to explain this as best I can. Civilization cards are broken into 2 different kinds of cards, and we have 2 of them right here. There's cards with a sand border on the bottom, and there's cards with a green grass border on the bottom. The ones with the green grass have, all of the cards are broken down the center with a canoe. So that means there's a top action and a bottom action. So if I were to place one of my yellow tokens on this card, the first thing that happens is you have to look above it and see how many resources you have to pay for that card. So in this slot, you have to pay 3 of any type of resource to gather this card. On the top action is something that you take immediately. So you immediately get that reward. In this case, you get to roll 2 dice and take that many stone depending upon the calculations of the card. This one you just get 2 stone, so it's not a good idea to trade in 4 resources to get just 2 back. The bottom parts of all the cards are game-ending scoring cards. The green ones work in this way. There's 8 different kinds of items, so to speak. There's a flute here, it looks like an olive branch here. If you were to gather all 8 of these by the end of the game, you were to get 64 points. So depending upon how many different ones you get by the end of the game, you get that many extra points. The other ones that have the gray or the sand border on them give you points for different items. For instance, this one is you get 1 point for every member you have in your tribe. And there's more of these. There's ones with 1 and 2 and even 3 of these. So you would multiply however many of these little shaman guys you have by the total number of these tribe members you have by the end of the game, and you get that many points. So it's very worthwhile to try to collect as many civilization cards as you can. And that's really one of the main reasons why I really enjoy this game even now, is that it's one of the first Euro games that introduced me to scoring mechanics that weren't just during the game, but they were things you were building up to get at the end of the game as well, which I really enjoyed. Now, playing more Euro-style games, I quickly found out that this isn't just something that Stone Age has, but it's in a very simple form, which makes it something very easy to teach newcomers, and it's something very easy to go back and play. It takes, like I said, about 60 minutes to play, even less if you're familiar with the game. So that is Stone Age in a nutshell. It's very easy to play, and there is some strategy to the game, although you quickly work out what works best, and everyone tends to go for the food production and the people production and these 3 basic areas, and you start to learn those mechanics. And I don't want to get too much into it, but I do want to say that this is an excellent starter light Euro game, and it's something I would suggest to anybody first getting into the hobby or someone who's looking for something that they can play in a short amount of time. So that's Stone Age, and thank you for watching.